All right. Well, welcome, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. How are you? How are you after the speech?
Somehow I survived. No, actually, the group was great. We had a lot of great communication. People were sharing their stories, and they had a lot of great questions about how race and media work. Sometimes when I give these presentations, it can be like you're talking to a brick wall. People don't really want to talk. They're hesitant. They're afraid they're going to be seen as racist or prejudiced or uninformed. And we didn't have a lot of that, and I thought that was great. So I thought we had a really great evening.
For those who weren't fortunate to come see your speech, what happened? What went down?
Well, basically, my speech is a distillation of ideas from my book called Race Baiter: How the Media Wields Dangerous Words to Divide a Nation. And the book is basically about how there are certain media outlets out there that use prejudice and racism and stereotypes to draw people to their media platforms and keep them from going to other media platforms.
And I know you went over it within the speech, but
Sure.
for those who are wondering, what does race baiter mean?
Well, the reason the book is called that is because I was called a race baiter by Bill O'Reilly on his TV show back in 2008. But I'm not sure exactly why he singled me out, but I have been a consistent critic of how he talks about race on his show. And when that happened, I wrote about it for the Huffington Post, and I wrote about it for my own newspaper. And I had a friend come to me and said, you know, you should really write a book about how when you want to talk honestly about race, people call you a race baiter because they're trying to shut you up. And I thought, you know, that's a really good idea. So I took that idea and I used it as an umbrella to include all of these. I've been writing about pop culture and race and media for at least a dozen years. And so I took all of these ideas that I had discovered over the course of that coverage, and I put them all together under that big umbrella of redefining the term race baiter.
What is your background? And I know a lot of people don't actually get to know much about your background.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you could elaborate more on where did you go to school, where were you from?
Sure. So I was born in Washington, D.C., but I was raised in Gary, Indiana, which is a town in northwest Indiana that's about 40 or 50 miles from Chicago. It's right underneath Lake Michigan. It was a city 90 to 95% black. My neighborhood was all black. The schools around me were all black. My mother thought education was important, so she sent me to private schools in middle school and high school. And so when I went to college, I went to Indiana University. It was, at that time, the number 4 journalism school in the country. And while I was in college, I was a journalism and political science major. They encouraged you to double major back then. But I was also in a band. I'm a drummer. I've been a drummer for 35 years. And I played in a band with David Milne, who is a music professor here at the school. And we were in a band that got signed to Motown when I was in college. And we went to Chicago and we recorded a record together. And then Motown got sold to another record company, and they never put out our record. But at least we had that experience of recording for Motown and saying we were a Motown recording artist. And it was really an amazing time.
Were there any classes that really like stuck out to you that you continue to use today, as in like within your field?
Yeah, and when you're a senior journalism major, you take journalism ethics. They leave that as one of the last classes because they give you the skills, and then they want to teach you sort of how to use the skills and contextualize them. And I took a journalism ethics class with a teacher who was new to teaching. And so she hadn't been quite beaten down by the system yet. And she brought in this book called Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky. And he wrote this great book about all the forces that limit and control the press in modern society. And some of it is dated because it talks a little bit about like El Salvador and Latin America, because when he wrote the book, those were real hot spots at the time, and it feels a little dated now. But there's other parts of the book that are absolutely essential to understanding how modern newspapers and modern mainstream media outlets work. There's in my book, I talk about manufacturing consent, and I have some of the lessons that I learned from manufacturing consent in the last chapter of my own book.
I know some students are wondering, and I'm also wondering, how can a journalism student who's trying to get at least on your level or anything near, how did you get to where you are now, especially from going from school?
Well, I did two things. Number one, I always had a plan, even though my career didn't necessarily always follow my plan, I always had a plan, right? And I think that's very important. I decided that I was going to be a journalist when I was in high school. So I started developing a game plan for how to get training and how to develop my craft when I was a sophomore or junior in high school. And I'm not saying that if people didn't do that, you know, they're screwed up. I'm just saying that you do have to have a game plan for how you want to get the skills you want to have and how you want to get the kind of jobs you have. But the other thing you have to do is you have to be open to opportunity. And sometimes opportunity will come along and it won't look like what you planned or what you thought it would be. The opportunity came to work for NPR, and I realized here is where I could be a nationally known critic. My voice and my opinions could have a wide impact on people, but it's in radio, and I never thought I'd be working in radio, but it's worked out very well so far. And a lot of what I do is on the radio, but I also write for blogs that NPR has for npr.org.
Thank you, Eric, for coming here. I really enjoyed your speech.
Great.
And I'm really glad that we were able to talk about it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for being on campus too, because
I'm glad to be here, man. I'm just glad that you guys are willing to hear the message and willing to let me be the messenger. So.
All right. Well, we'll be back with more packages.